morning and welcome to small town Japan. So today we're going to talk about what I find a fascinating subject of raising mixed children and all the challenges associated therein with. It's something I've always wanted to kind of break down and get into a little bit because I see the challenges of it as a teacher. I'm in the school, and especially I would say pronounced since I live in the countryside, that there's not a lot of mixed children here, but there still are. And I can even see from an outsider's perspective, where I'm not raising them myself, that these children are having a very, shall we call it, unique experience in school. Not always bad, but I think you'd be naive to say that they aren't having extra challenges, of course, because they're different from everybody else. Now, as I say, I can't speak to this personally or on a much deeper level than kind of what I see when I'm working at the schools. And so, for today, I have a friend who, I would say he's one of these settled gentlemen who lives in Japan, where he's lived here for some time, has a great understanding of the language, has settled down, has a house for himself, and is now raising a family of 2 boys. Lucky to say, congratulations to him, that not so long ago he's had his second child. And he's a great guy, incredible teacher, and he's very kindly and generously offered his time today to sit down and, from a more personal perspective, discuss what it is that is exciting for him to do this, discuss what's challenging, and I think particularly interesting because all time is a time of change, how he sees these sort of things that he experiences now changing through the years that he continues to live in Japan and his children grow up. So we're going to meet up today and be granted some really interesting insight into something which I've always wanted to know about on a much deeper level. Being a parent, as they say, is a full-time job, so to accommodate schedules a little better, Lee and I are going to meet up in a park, and so the family is going to be able to go for a walk while he meets up with me to have this chat. I think it's better anyways than always doing it in the house and being a talking head on a couch or something like that. It's a little more interesting landscape. Hey guys, we made it to the forest now. So with me today is Lee, friend from England, as I mentioned, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself. How'd you end up in Japan?
Well, I've been here since 2005.
Okay.
Yeah, so quite a while now.
Long time.
Yes, and I lived here for a year in 2005. Came back. I went back to England. Came back in 2007. I was doing martial arts in England, so I came to Japan to do martial arts.
Okay.
And I've just been here ever since. Got married, had children, built a house.
So
yeah. So I've just been here ever since, really. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about today kind of like the unique challenges facing a parent like yourself. And so that's what I wanted to open with. What is a challenge that you would say you have raising your children at the outset of mixed ethnicity here in Japan?
If I had to think of something that's been a problem, has maybe been with my older boy with his language skills.
Okay.
Because obviously he's got his father speaking English to him, his mother speaking Japanese to him.
Oh,
He's learning both, but because of that, his speed at which his speaking came on has been quite slow compared to what would be the average for kids speaking.
So not even like a societal thing. It's just
No.
developmental thing.
Yes.
Because he's.
Yeah.
I see. Did that surprise you? Was that something that you were like, oh, he's not learning as quickly as he thought he might, and then you kind of figured out, you're like, oh, perhaps it's because of the bilingualism?
I have this kind of philosophy that, kids develop at different rates, so
Yes.
they do things when they're ready, and the thing is I noticed about him was he was understanding both. Like, he wasn't
Okay.
speaking, but he was understanding Japanese and he was understanding English as well.
I see.
And now he's 3 years old, he's come to a point where he's speaking both. Like, he's
Okay.
counting to 10 in English, he's counting to 10 in Japanese, he's saying Japanese colors, he's saying English colors. He's starting to put together sentences now, especially since he joined nursery school.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because I think he sees the other kids communicating with each other and communicating with the teacher, and he wants to try that a little bit more.
Sure.
So I mean, it's come on a lot. So, I mean, that's probably been the most, the biggest problem I've had
I see.
with the mixed ethnicity thing. You know.
So it's sort of like the Matrix. He's like downloading both kung fu and whatever other martial art at the same time.
Yes.
So it takes a little more time to get that into you.
But now he's coming along fine. It's great, you know.
Okay.
Like for me personally, one of the problems with which is a problem because I'm living in Japan.
Yes.
Is the language thing.
That's what I wanted to ask you about as well. Like, say now that's like from your personal perspective in the home, and maybe they haven't entered out to have those like more significant interactions in the society. But what about like simple experiences exposing your children, like even when they were born in the hospital? I wanted to ask about that. Like, did you feel that you had any sort of different treatment, good or bad, when you were there?
Oh, well, I mean, my kids were honestly treated like sort of minor celebrities when they were in the hospital, you know, because being like a half kid, like Japanese people seem to really notice half children are different to like full Japanese children, you know, so they're sort of like, oh, kawaii, and it's just this constant, like, you know, kind of like the gossip going around. Have you seen little whatever the name is? It's so cute. And I mean, like, from my point of view, like I was saying with the medical Japanese, I mean, you do feel a little bit like a little bit impotent, like you can't really do a lot because, you know, the nurses, they're using like medical terminology, which, if you know your Japanese like mine, is based in sort of like everyday conversation, things like that, you know, you're not picking up on these medical terms, you know, and so I kind of have to leave things to my wife, who's, you know, just had a baby and recovering from having a baby, to try and
all
like
this other information coming in,
to try and like organize the things, you know, like what's happening, and also like when we get like aid from the government, you know, because we get money from the government for like children, you know, because obviously the Japanese government is really pushing for have children. So you know, there's some like financial incentive there where they're helping you with money and things. Like just for example, like nursery school. Like the first kid you have, you pay for your nursery school.
Okay.
The second kid you have, you get a 50% reduction.
Oh wow.
The third kid is free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, the government helps you a lot, you know, but when they're sending letters and things, I have to leave this all to my wife. Yeah. Because I can't read Japanese.
At that, sure.
So when they're sending correspondence to me, you know, I can't read that. So again, it kind of feels a little bit like I want to do stuff, but I can't.
I hear you.
Because of the language barrier, you know. But this problem would be completely erased if it was the reverse and we were living in England.
True.
I would probably be doing everything, you know, and my wife.
Because you would still have mixed children, but of course, because it's your first culture, then you'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about, like challenges at these initial stages, but more topics to come. So let's go explore further into this trippy forest, shall we?
Let's go.
Cool. So before you were talking about how you anticipated that there was going to be a few things in the future once they get a little bit older that you would need to overcome. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? What are some of these things?
Okay, sure. So one of the things that I am most concerned about in the future is my kids losing their bilingual ability.
Okay.
You know, I've taught junior high school for quite a long time. Here in Japan, I've taught a lot of half kids. So what they call half here, which is mixed ethnicity. And the thing that I've noticed as a general rule is that the girls tend to maintain their bilingual ability really well. The boys, not so much.
Okay.
And I have 2 boys.
Okay. There you go.
So that's one of the things that I'm slightly worried about. I have talked to like other parents about it, and it seems to be that the reason why, there's quite a few reasons, but one of the big reasons is the kids want to fit in.
Okay.
You know, because I mean, this is a country, you got 98% population is Japanese.
Yeah.
You know, so they already stand out with the color of their hair, maybe the color of their eyes, their skin tone.
Yeah.
So, you know, they want to do their best to fit in.
and in a culture that truly appreciates that.
Yes.
They celebrate fitting in. So
Yes.
like you already have the pull of the kids in the first place naturally wanting to, and then the culture comes in. Sure.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, so they try and suppress things that they're able to suppress. Obviously, there's nothing they can do about their hair, but they try to suppress the English part. So they try not to speak English. You know, they try and speak very Japanese. They try and behave very Japanese. You know, so because of that, they kind of like they don't use their English very much. And of course, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes, very true.
So, especially when it's at that young developmental age. So that's the thing that concerns me a little bit, you know. So I want to try and find ways to encourage them.
So what would you do? That's what I want to know when you because you're anticipating it, you can see that as something you've identified. What are you going to do? What's the plan?
Well, part of my one of my big ideas is to send my kids home to my parents in England.
Oh, okay.
So when we have the summer vacation here, what I'd like to do, if possible, is to send my kids like 2 or 3 weeks back to England every year. So this way, they're put in a situation where they're forced to use their English.
Excellent.
You know, they can't speak Japanese. They can't get away with like, you know, speaking to mummy or daddy and saying, you know, I want to do this. Ask Nana if I can do this. You know, it's they have to use their English. You know, or they go out and they have to communicate in English. So it kind of forces them to use it. So that's part of my plan.
Because I was thinking as well, you have the situation there, which you're addressing even by this, but I was thinking a big concern, and I've seen it before, is the family aspect back home, where they're not going to speak Japanese necessarily, and that's quite a burden to put on your family, where you say, now you got to become bilingual too, when it would just be so much easier if your children were bilingual, and then they can talk to each side of their family. And what a tragedy if they can't, because they got to know their grandparents.
Oh,
so.
for sure. And for me as well. You know,
Yeah.
because I mean, my Japanese is of a level,
Yeah.
but it's not perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of like a nightmare. Like if I have my sons,
Yeah.
and I can only communicate with them in a very basic way. I mean, that's a horrible situation to have. You know. So yeah, but for my parents as well. You know. So yeah, exactly. So I really want to make sure that I instill in them, you know, and I think it has to come from, you can't force kids into that. I think you have to get them to enjoy English, you know,
Yeah, definitely.
and find ways of getting them to enjoy reading, you know, or so to enjoy reading in English.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm gonna like be reading them bedtime stories like Harry Potter and things like this.
That's
you know?
cool.
So they're
That's
so
cool.
they're listening to English, you know, and then maybe they want to read themselves, you know, and maybe get them indoctrinated a little bit sort of nerdy culture, you know.
Yeah.
Like I like D&D.
So do I.
So you know, and D&D has these massive tomes of rules, you know,
Yeah.
which I can give to them and say, hey, go read this, you know.
Yeah. I think of it as in that kind of concept where it's like if you want to be fit, there's like I think people who look at it as kind of like this grind that you have to do something that you hate every time, but really if you found a sport that you enjoy, then you'll be out there, you'll be being active, and you won't bemoan the fact that you have to do it in just the same way. I think you're hitting it on the head there. If they like D&D, which how could they not? It's so much fun.
Indeed it is, yeah.
Then they'll be able to engage with it in a way where, you know, they're inseparable. They have to know English because they love that thing associated with it.
Yes.
No.
Yes. And I mean, and that's part of like generally teaching as well, you know.
Yeah.
You gotta try and
Yeah.
trick people into learning.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, in an enjoyable way.
Yes.
Yeah, so definitely the D&D then. That'll help.
I think just because of these giant tomes of rules, I mean, you know, if a kid's really into it, you give them the book and they're sitting there flicking through this like 300-page book
Sure.
of like, you know, 0.08 font or whatever it is. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
how can you go wrong, you know? And I learned so many words from D&D.
That's true.
You know,
That's true.
there's so many words in there that you go, what does that word even mean? You flick through.
So that can be another thing. You never know, again, when you have the parents of mixed children here. It's that thing, just like you made the point, it is a parallel to teaching. You're always finding ways, because it's teaching them your language, essentially.
absolutely.
That if you make it fun, that's a way that they would be able to progress.
Yeah, and they want to study in their own time.
Yeah.
You know, they want to get better at it. You know, it's not a case of I have to do English now.
Yeah.
It's like, let's play a game. Oh, cool, a game. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's this period of the discussion. I think we got at least one more left in us. Shall we?
Cool. Okay, let's go.
wanted to ask about, obviously there was a decision you made where you decided it was here that you were going to raise your children as opposed to back in England. And so what were some of the reasons for that? Why did you do that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, like keeping my kids bilingual
Yes.
is really, really important to me. And you know, when I thought about it, like for the reading and writing side of Japanese, living in Japan, I think is really, really important.
Yes.
Because, you know, for kanji especially, you know, you just have to basically memorize kanji. You know, like with English words, if you don't recognize a word, you can sound it out phonetically, and then maybe then it pops in. All right, so it's this word. I know this word. But kanji you can't. You just have to memorize it.
True.
Like the kanji for now, you can't go. It's ima. No, you have to just know that this kanji is
Pictographically, this means
exactly. So, in order to kind of like make it easier for my boys to learn the reading and writing, I decided to stay here because you have to be surrounded by kanji, you know, and you
Sure.
have to be seeing it in context all the time, you know, to help you memorize it and
Reinforce.
learn it. Yeah, and reinforce it exactly, you know, because like it's important for me that they have the choice of whether they want to stay in Japan when they're older or if they want to go to an English-speaking country, you know.
Gotcha.
Because if they were living back in England, you know, I mean, I don't think they would be able to read and write Japanese to a level that would be sufficient to get them a job
Sure.
here in Japan, you know, because I mean, when they leave junior high school, you know, they have to know 3,000 kanji from leaving junior high school.
That's intense.
You know, that is a lot of kanji.
Yeah.
And we're not talking like, you know, kanji that are completely different and
Yeah.
easy to identify. We're talking a lot of kanji that's very, very, very similar.
I see.
You know.
That's true. Yeah, they're built of all the same parts or whatever, so it's like some variation.
Yeah.
It does seem kind of like the road less traveled to have them here, because I think a lot of people would think that, oh, English is the primary language used around the world, and so wouldn't it be easier to go there? But it's true that certainly it would be easier in England, and they get that, call it the more dominant world spoken language, but then it would be so much harder for the other aspects of it.
And I mean, here, you know, they learn English in elementary school, they learn it in junior high school, you know, so they're gonna have equal.
Yes.
You know, they're gonna have it the Japanese, but they're also gonna have English in school plus what they're learning from me. You know, whereas in England, they're not learning any Japanese from school.
No, no.
You know,
Not so much.
Japanese is not a subject we study in England.
Yeah.
You know, unless you were going to go to some kind of like specialist school. But then that's a whole thing of that then is determining where we're living in England. So we've got to be close to one of these specialist schools. You know, so it made more sense for them to be here from the language point of view. You know, plus like being here, I quite like the togetherness.
That's what I was
that
going to
they
ask
have,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, like the cultural details too, because the language is obviously a big part, but like, could you speak about that? Like, what's some of the culture details that you like about being here?
I really like the togetherness that the kids like, are put like, that they experience in the school, you know, where it's kind of teamwork is a big thing.
Yeah.
Here, you know, and kind of being part of the team. You know, I don't like the kind of the extreme of it where it's kind of like don't stand out. You know,
Yes.
that I'm not such a big fan of. But I like the kind of emphasis on being together and working as a team and teamwork and being efficient in what you do. Also, I like the kind of the way they make the kids clean the school as well. So they teach them like humility.
That's a good point.
You know, to care for your things. You know, to look after your things. You know.
Sort of community responsibility. It's not just like the personal interaction, but kind of how you care for the more material things.
Yes.
But then that strengthens the interactions you have because you like the place that you live in, not only the relationships that you have there.
But also for the kids, you know, they're walking around in school, you know, and they're careful about what they do. You know, they're not just throwing garbage on the floor and things because they're gonna have to clean it later.
Yeah, this is a great point.
Yeah,
That's
you
a
know,
great
and
point.
also I like the health. You know, it's a very healthy lifestyle here. You know, and in school, you know, the kids, it's very strict regarding the calories they eat and things like this. You know, so they're not allowed to bring fizzy drinks to school. You know, it's either water or mugicha.
Okay.
In their flasks, you know, they're not bringing Coca-Cola or things. They can't bring snacks, and then no snacks. They can't bring anything. You know, the food they're having is the lunch, the school lunch.
which is so good. This is, you could almost do a separate video on, and some people have, I'm sure, the health of the school lunch. Like, I'm constantly impressed that this is in the public schools. This is what everybody has access to, and it's of such a high quality. I think, I mean, whether you exactly all the tastes appeal to you, what you're eating is healthy essentially. Like,
I mean, it's very calorie controlled. You know, they have upper limits on what they can put on the plate. You know, and you get all sorts. And they try and theme it as well. So it's kind of like you're experiencing different dishes from all around Japan, and then from different countries as well. So they do try and broaden the kids' horizons that way, where it's not just, you know, the same things all the time, which is good, I think. You know, expose them to different things.
And you're, like, now that you mention it, I've noticed this in the schools, like at any sort of like special holiday, you'll usually have a sort of like micro version of whatever that type of traditional food is that's used in that holiday and stuff. And that's an interesting perspective as well, I think, is when you think about education, we often think of it as limited to the exact subjects that they're learning. But here in Japan, like you said, whether it's humility, whether it's diet, their schools, they're very strong in that respect. They teach you holistically. There's a lot of really useful things.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, Japan's not perfect.
No,
by any stretch of the imagination.
Yes.
You know, but I do like especially out here in the countryside. You know, I do like the sort of like some of the ideas they have. You know, about teaching the kids to work together and be together. You know, and work as a team. So, you know, I'm keen for my sons to pick up on that kind of like ethic.
Cool. Right on. Well, that was really cool. Thank you for coming on, Lee.
No problem.
I really appreciate it.
Happy to, hopefully it was interesting.
I'm sure. And thank you guys for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, as is natural, why don't you hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos, you can hit the subscribe. And also, YouTube has given us that one more step, lovely as it is, to hit the bell notification, and then for your benefit, when a new video comes out, you'll be let known right away when I've posted it up, and you can get up to the moment updates on whenever it is that a video has gone live. Also, it makes a huge difference to a channel like mine where I'm in the middle to small range. If you guys do want some extra goodies like a shared folder of photos I'm taking around Japan, chance to be entered in photo print giveaways, there's also my Patreon that you can join up there, and if you support me, I really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching. I'll say that one more time, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.